My breath hitched in my throat as I stared at the final page. The ink was different here, darker, thicker, and applied with a frantic hand. It wasn't just a journal, it was a countdown. And the date on the last entry, it was today's date. I could hear something scratching behind the wardrobe, a sound like fingernails on dry wood. I realized then that the low rent wasn't a discount, it was a bounty. I was never meant to be a tenant. I was meant to be the final ingredient in a ritual that had been waiting 40 years to conclude.
It started 3 weeks ago. I was desperate for a place to stay after losing my job. The advertisement on the old lamppost seemed like a godsend. Room for rent, quiet, very affordable. When I arrived at the boarding house, it looked like any other decaying building in the city's outskirts, gray, crumbling, and smelling of damp earth. The landlord was a skeletal man who didn't look me in the eye. He handed me the key to room 404 and told me one thing: whatever you hear at night, stay inside. The walls here have memories they don't like to share. The room was freezing, even in the middle of July. It was sparsely furnished with a saggy bed and a heavy mahogany wardrobe that looked like it hadn't been moved in decades. On the third night, I noticed a floorboard that sounded hollow. Curiosity got the better of me. I pried it open with a kitchen knife, expecting nothing but dust. Instead, I found a bundle wrapped in rotting black silk. Inside was a leather-bound book, its cover etched with symbols that made my eyes ache if I looked at them for too long. This was the beginning of my descent.
The first few pages of the diary were dated 1982. The writer was a girl named Alara. Her early entries spoke of a mother who led their small community within these walls. They weren't just tenants, they were followers. She wrote about the beauty of the darkness and the gift they were preparing for the one who waits beneath. As I read, the temperature in the room plummeted. I could see my own breath misting in the air. The writing grew more erratic, shifting from elegant cursive to jagged, desperate scratches that tore through the paper.
By the 10th page, the tone changed to pure terror. Hilara described how the mother began locking them in their rooms at night. She mentioned the sounds of chanting echoing through the vents, a low, rhythmic hum that vibrated in her very bones. I stopped reading and looked up at the ceiling. To my horror, I realized the vent in my room was covered in a thick, black soot. I climbed onto the bed to inspect it, and a faint, rhythmic humming started to resonate from within the metal duct. It was exactly as she had described, decades later.
I tried to leave the next morning, but the landlord was nowhere to be found, and the front door was bolted from the outside. I went back to the diary, searching for answers. Alara wrote about the marking. She said they would paint symbols on the walls using a mixture of ash and something she refused to name. I ran to the wardrobe and pushed it aside with all my strength. Behind it, the wallpaper was peeling. I ripped a strip away, and my heart stopped. The wall was covered in dark, reddish-brown sigils, pulsing with a faint, sickly light.
The diary entries for August 1983 were the worst. Hilara wrote about the disappearances. One by one, the other tenants were called to the basement. She described the smell of ozone and copper that filled the hallways after each calling. She knew she was next. She wrote, "They think the walls are stone and mortar, but they are flesh and bone. The house is hungry, and Mother is the one who feeds it." As I read, though, I felt a vibration beneath my feet, as if the very house was breathing a heavy, satisfied sigh.
I found a Polaroid tucked between the pages. It showed a group of people standing in the communal kitchen. They were all smiling, but their eyes were wide and vacant. In the center was a tall woman in a red robe, the mother. I recognized the kitchen. It was the one I used every morning. But in the photo, the floor was covered in a black, viscous liquid. I looked down at my own feet. The shadows in the corner of my room were moving, stretching out toward me like liquid ink, mimicking the floor in that cursed photograph. The final entries were written in total darkness. Hilara spoke of a ritual that required a vessel of the new age. someone who would arrive years later to finish what they started. She mentioned that the diary itself was the lure, a way to bind the reader to the house. Every word I read was a knot being tied around my soul. I tried to drop the book, but my hands wouldn't move. It was as if the leather was fusing to my skin. I heard a voice, a rasping whisper that didn't come from the room, but from inside my own head. Finish the passage.
I turned to the last page. It was dated today. It described me. It described the clothes I was wearing, the fear in my eyes, and the way I was currently looking at the wardrobe. The entry said, "The vessel has arrived. The circle is closed. Mother is coming home." Suddenly, the wardrobe doors burst open. It wasn't empty. A desiccated corpse, wrapped in the same red robe from the photo, tumbled out. But it wasn't dead. Its jaw unhinged, and the same humming sound I heard in the vents filled the room, deafening and primal.
I screamed, but no sound came out. The room began to warp, the walls stretching and turning into a dark, organic tunnel. I realized the boarding house was never a building. It was a throat. I was being swallowed by a ritual that had spanned decades. The symbols on the walls began to bleed, the red liquid pooling around my feet, pulling me down into the floorboards. As I sank, I saw the landlord standing in the doorway. He wasn't skeletal anymore. He was changing, his skin smoothing out, fueled by the energy of my terror.
I managed to grab my phone and post a quick thread, a desperate warning to anyone looking for cheap housing in this district. If you see an ad for a room in a gray building with a skeletal landlord, run. Don't look at the floorboards. Don't read the books. I can feel the mother's cold hands on my shoulders now. She's whispering that the ritual is almost complete. My vision is fading to red. If you find this diary next, God help you, because you're already part of the story.
The shadows have fully taken me now. The house is silent again, waiting for the next tenant to find the deal of a lifetime. If you ever find yourself in a place that feels too cheap to be true, remember my story. Some things are hidden for a reason, and some diaries are never meant to be read. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on the dark things that hide in plain sight. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and never, never rent room 404.